My name is Charles Kovac. I'm the housing manager for the city of Huntington Beach. With me today is Greg Hoang. He's over here. He's the senior housing analyst. And Kim Ratting was at the sign-in desk, and she's our housing management aide. I want to thank you guys for coming out this afternoon to be a part of this process. You're probably wondering what this is, what the Consolidated Plan is. Well, we're going to answer those questions. So basically, the city receives federal funding in the terms, in the sense of like community development block grant money and home investment partnerships funds. We receive grant money from the federal government, and in order to receive that money, we have to produce certain documents, some yearly, some every 5 years. In this case, we're doing the Consolidated Plan for the 25-29 period. Seems like a long time. We're currently in the last year of our 2020-2024 plan, so time just flies by. Our meeting overview, I've already done our introductions. If you guys want to introduce yourself, if you're representing an organization or anything.
I'm representing myself.
Okay, that's good. That's an organization. If you want to introduce your name and just...
Well, okay, Eric Zender.
Okay.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, that's all you have. Hey, do you want to...
My name is Annabelle.
Okay.
And I usually using the senior center.
Senior center, got it.
I don't represent anyone, but I have a lot of concern regarding about the elderly and also, the disabilities.
Okay.
So that's why I'm here, as just one of the...
May not totally be able to help you out, but we'll listen to what you have to say.
Dan Hazard, resident for 33 years and spent a decade of my life financing municipal bond projects across America.
Okay, great.
I'm Armida Brashears. I'm a 58-year resident of Huntington Beach and a community interested person. I belong to a lot of different organizations. The last one being the League of Women Voters, but other community organizations too. And I'm very interested in housing because I don't understand these people who vote against affordable apartment buildings. I don't know, do they want people living on the street? No, they don't want that. But do they want them living in apartments? It doesn't seem like they don't want that either. What do they want these people to evaporate, or what is their strategy for taking care of these people?
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Wall. I've lived in this beautiful city for 1 year, and I'm anxious to learn more about it.
Mr. Amory Hanson, a historic choice.
Do you have to introduce yourself? Would you have to introduce yourself?
Will we talk about anything?
We will. We're just
Not yet.
What?
No, just introducing your
Introduction.
name.
Yeah.
Just my name.
Name.
Yeah.
Fine. Your name?
Ellen Riley.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give a staff presentation, 20 minutes. It's about 20 slides. Feel free to ask any questions during the presentation or after, at the end of the presentation. Then we'll turn it over to you, the audience, and if you have any comments, such as what you brought up about affordable housing, we just want to know what you think the needs of the community are, and maybe some of this funding can fulfill those needs. So that's mainly what the Consolidated Plan is about. So let's talk about that. So what is the Consolidated Plan? As I mentioned, it's a 5-year plan that's required by HUD. HUD is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They oversee all of the federal funding related to cities, such as like I said, community development block grant, home investment partnerships. And what this document does, it identifies the community needs. whether it's affordable housing, infrastructure, helping the youth, helping the seniors, helping the special needs community. It's what identifies the community needs. And with the resources that we receive, we try to address those community needs. And the resources that we primarily receive, as I mentioned before, is the Community Development Block Grant, which we received probably a little over $1 million, and the Home Investment Partnerships funding, which we receive approximately $550,000 a year. Full disclosure, that money's been coming down. We used to receive around 1.2 million of CDBG and maybe 750,000 in home investment, but for some reason that's coming down. Don't know why, because the formula that the federal government uses is like Coca-Cola secret ingredients. You know, we just don't know what the formula is. One second. We just need to know that that's the funding we receive every year. We're automatically an entitlement city, and therefore we receive this funding, but it varies. I think because our stagnant population, it's been around 200,000. It hasn't gone up significantly like the city of Irvine, where they're receiving a lot more money. Ours has kind of remained around, 195 to 205,000. So it's pretty stagnant. So I think that's factored into it. You had a question.
I just don't know what home investment partnerships are.
Yeah, that's it. I'll get into that.
And is this the sum total of the funds that then you allocate?
Yeah, yeah.
Or no?
No, this is the total funds that we expend every year. And again, it varies. And we do have some carryover from the prior year if there's some cost savings on something. So, but we just kind of estimate it for now. So the major components of the Consolidated Plan is community participation, and that's what we're doing today. Housing and community development needs assessment, that's determining what those needs are. Is it affordable housing? Is it infrastructure? Is it, helping youth groups, or whatever the needs are?
Who determines that?
The needs assessment, the community.
And when does it happen?
Well, it's through the survey. It's through these meetings. We get feedback from you and say, hey, it looks like affordable housing or something like that is a primary goal or a priority, and therefore it's included as one of the goals that are eligible for the funding. So then we have a strategic plan which established the priority for addressing the needs, and that's where the goals and priorities come in. And then every year we do a one-year action plan. We get this money from the federal government, and what we do is we allocate every dollar, not 1 cent is left on the table, every dollar is allocated to address those goals and needs that are outlined in the strategic plan. So we have programs related to infrastructure, we have programs related to affordable housing, we have programs for which we call public service programs, which are for seniors, youth, at risk of homelessness, and special needs individuals. So this one-year action plan is what we submit to HUD that says, hey, here's our budget for the year. You've given us $1.5 million. This is how we're gonna expend that funds. So every year we'll have 5 one-year plans within the 5-year consolidated plan. So annually, yep. Annually, we do a new one-year plan.
Starting in October?
Yes, around there, and then we approve it in May. And these are the opportunities for community input. We have our community development needs survey. We have paper ones that if you want to fill out, but we do have it online. We have a QR code that can immediately take you to the survey. We had a community meeting on October 30th, last Wednesday night. Emery Hansen was at that one. I was at Oakview. This is our second one. This is November 7th meeting. We have a share stakeholders workshop, which is all the nonprofit groups that apply for some of this funding. and we'll meet with them next Thursday. And then we start the process of trying to get the funding distributed, allocated through the city process. And that includes going to our public hearing on January 16th with the CPAB. The CPAB is the Citizens Participation Advisory Board. It is a city committee that makes recommendations to the city council on how the funds should be expended. So that will be the first meeting. We'll meet with them 3 or 4 times to kind of get an idea of where the money's going to go based upon the goals and objectives that are based upon the surveys and your community input.
How can you select to the CPA?
You don't get elected to do it. You're appointed by council members. Each council member has 1 appointee, so it's a 7-member board. So you would have to go to the city manager's office and actually apply to be considered for CPAB or one of the other, like planning commission, or so you'd have to go there. We may have openings, so if anybody wants to be part of that board, certainly apply, because some people, as council members, are not reelected. Certainly, if the vote holds up, there'll be 3 new council members, which means there's going to be 3 new CPAB members.
Where did you say we apply?
Oh, I think the city manager's office, is that correct?
The manager or the secretary?
So the secretary of the city manager's office. The question is, where do you apply for this? The question was where do you apply? Well, how do you become a CPAB member? And the other question is, where do you apply to be a CPAB member? Again, being a CPAB, you're appointed by the city council member. They get 1 appointee to being on the CPAB. And you can apply to be on any committee, not just, there's like 20 plus committees in the city. You can apply to be on CPAB or Planning Commission or the Harbor Commission or whatever you desire. Just got to go to the city council's office and talk to the secretaries or administrative aides that are part of that department.
And this is the volunteer job. No.
Yeah, no pay. Yeah. Then we'd have a long line of people probably, I'm sure.
The council members eventually term out, so once that happens.
Yeah. And like I said, yes, council members will eventually term out. So the 3 that are in jeopardy of terming out right now, they'll go away. Their appointees will go away, and then the 3 new council members, if again the vote holds up as it's shown lately, the 3 new council members will appoint their own CPAB, Planning Commission, Harbor Commission, whatever, Economic Development Commission members. So
For short, the term of the CPAS, it depends on whoever the council
Yeah.
member of.
So if they're there, if a new council member appoints somebody, then they're there for their term. So 4 years for a new one, 2 years for the existing one. Let's say their current committee member or board member decides to quit, then the new person would serve at least to their, the term of that individual.
So if a current council member who's turned out
Yeah.
selects us or whatever, will we be able to stay? Or will we be able to stay, or will they get kicked off when the council member is replaced?
Yeah, whenever you're there, again, I think we're kind of getting off track here, but you're there as long as the council member's there. If you were appointed by them, unless they fire you, but I don't think, Yeah,
When the person is not there, the shadow is gone.
yeah. So the CPAB will start meeting in January 16th. There'll be a few meetings. There'll be a meeting for presentations by nonprofits to kind of request money. Eventually on March 18th, and these dates below here are kind of tentative because we're 5-6 months out, but we plan on having a city council CPAB study session on March 18th, and that's when both groups get together in a public forum, and we kind of provide what the funding recommendations may look like. And obviously, the city council can look at it and go, well, I don't agree with you there, and we want to change this or change that. But that's going to occur on March 18th. Right after that, we'll do a 30-day public review of the document, the Consolidated Plan. It's going to be like 400 pages because it has a lot of maps and data and surveys that have been taken and information. So it's a pretty thick document. So we're required to have it on the website, in paper at the city hall for a period of 30 days. So we're assuming March 31st through May 6th. And then the city council on May 6th will consider approval of the 5-year 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan. So again, as you can see, there's plenty of opportunities to voice your opinion as we want you to say, hey, we need, we're lacking funding for this type of activity, or, and therefore, I will hope that some of the funding goes to that activity. Yes.
And this whole process is for the 1.5 million.
Yes, exactly. We have to do it every year. This is just a special because it's the 5th year. So it's quite the process. If you ever dealt with the federal government, as some of us probably have, they love their paper and everything, and they love their process. So we're just the victims to that. And just for a simple $10,000 grant, the paperwork involved to get the grant, to monitor, to record the grant, to get the money, and then to tell people where that money went to. Every penny has to be accounted for. It just piles up, and so yeah. So it's really comprehensive. All right. So we like I said, we've been promoting the survey over the past probably 3 weeks, a month maybe. It's been out. We've received. This has not been updated, but we have over 200 surveys submitted. Now, just for comparison, I think if you have over 300, that's a pretty good sample size. So you can see that one person that submits it has a pretty good weighted, average in terms of influencing their views and everything. It's not like there's 2 million and where one person doesn't move the needle. One person could move the needle, so to speak. But so far, of the 169 that we've accumulated for up to last week, these are kind of like the categories that stand out in terms of what has been the highest rated. For instance, housing needs, affordable rental housing, senior housing, and code enforcement have been, seem like they're the highest right now. Public facility needs, looks like there's a parks and playgrounds is a need for, it seems like so far. Infrastructure, it looks like street improvements and beautification is the highest so far. Public service needs, meaning anti-crime, domestic violence, and homeless services are seemed like at the halfway point of this survey period seem to be the most popular choices. So that could all change. And again, the survey is not the thing that determines what the goals and priorities will end up being. It is one of a few variables that are considered. And we'll get into some of the other variables. So these are the assessment categories, like housing needs, homeless needs, public service needs, public facilities needs, infrastructure needs, and economic development needs. So aside from the survey, we also take other information. For instance, infrastructure needs, the green one. We look at the capital improvement program for the city. What capital projects can be funded by these funds? And is there a need? Homeless needs, we look at the county's point-in-time homeless count that they do, I think they do every 2 years now. Used to be, well, last one I think was earlier this year. but they do a 24-hour count to determine how many homeless individuals are living in the city. So we look at that and go, okay, our homeless count has gone up, down, is it the same? And therefore, yes, could homeless be a category that we need to address? So we look at other factors, not just the survey. We look at other documentation, other surveys that are out there that impact the city of Huntington Beach. And again, this is primarily for Huntington Beach funding. So
No, I just wondered that you receive 1.55 million
Yeah.
from the HUD.
Yeah.
But you also using that money for the public service, public facility. It's not really for the housing. And I just wonder why.
we have used we've used home dollars for affordable housing. The senior project that's at the corner of Beach and Main, behind the Denny's,
Yeah.
right there. That one that just popped up in the backyard, it seems like. That was funded with city home dollars, $2.8 million. The problem is, because you've seen the numbers, we don't get a lot of money, like a lot of home money. We only get 550,000, as you say, and it's hard to build with just that. So we kind of try to layer the cake with other funding sources, and that's just one of them. It was fortunate that we got that 2.8 million from a repaid loan from like 20 years ago, and we were able to use it for this project.
Thank you.
Okay. So some of the other statistics and demographics we use is, okay, how's the city doing from a financial standpoint in terms of its residents and everything? So we identify poverty areas in the city, and the darker the purple, the more, I guess you could say, impoverished the area is. And if you look at the bottom, the dark, I'm not sure if you can read that, but it says that 12 to 24% of the population in the darkest areas are considered in poverty. So you can see that the lighter areas are the less impoverished areas. And this is all based upon the 2020 census. And this is information that HUD provides to us. It's not, they already have all these demographics kind of baked in for every city in the United States that receives these type of federal funds. So this is just some other information that we have inside the, that we'll include inside the Consolidated Plan, showing, okay, here's the population in poverty.
Question, if I may.
Sure.
My understanding is with the poverty numbers, only takes into account income, not assets.
It's
So
correct.
a widow that's living on 10,000 in Social Security
Which just also,
might be in the $1 million house.
exactly. You're dead right.
But you know what? I have to put that, every year we have to pay the real estate tax.
Yeah.
Right?
Property tax.
Some of the real estate tax return back to the city, and look
Yeah.
at the Huntington Beach. I can see that, you have a lot of activity, like the air show, like surfing, and then, some of the property here, more than $1 million.
Yeah.
And those money should go back to the city, and the city using that money to go back and helping the poor people. Why we still have a lot of area that?
Well, it's because a lot of the city receives around 15%, 14% of the property tax dollars. It also receives like 1% of the retail sales tax. So there's a bunch of funding sources that create the operation budget for the city. So some of these funding sources, like property taxes, may go towards street improvements. We have, we have potholes like any other city. I live in Yorba Linda, Fullerton areas, and there's a lot more street issues than there are here. I'm very happy with the streets here compared to, where I live and everything. So each city's different, and they expend their money differently.
But you said that this one is the map in 2000, right?
2020.
Or 2020?
It's the 2020 census, which obviously is the latest census, and the numbers are adjusted based upon the what they call the American, I forgot what it's called, it's an adjustment factor. Oh yeah, there it is. I'm sorry, the American Community Survey, which is a kind of, they adjust it based upon what year it is, because 2020 is now 4 years old.
Would you remind me again that the dark area is the one that more poverty people live there?
More impoverished, like it says, for the darkest, it's like between 12 and 24% of the population. And yeah, in the darkest areas, 12 to 24% of the population is in poverty. So as you can see, there's areas that are completely light where there's only up to 3% of the population. So it just kind of isolates, and it's important to have this map, because it does show eventually where we're allowed to do some improvements, and I'll get to that in a second.
Quick question, if I may,
Sure.
before we move on. 8%, can you put it in context?
Yes.
How does that compare to Orange County in general?
Actually, it's pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I used to be a consultant in another life and everything, so I've seen a lot of cities, and 8%'s, pretty low compared to most cities, especially in Orange County. Maybe South Orange County, it's comparable, but if you get into the Stantons, Westminsters, Garden Grove, probably, it's higher. It's definitely higher. Thanks for pointing out the 8%, because I forgot to, give that comparison. So this next one, these are just information, just to kind of show the type of information that's within that consolidated plan. This is the ones that are showing where severe renter overpayment occurs. And what I mean by severe renter overpayment is that if 50% of your gross salary, and I'm saying gross, that's before taxes, 50% of your gross salary goes to rent, then you're severely overpaying rent, right? So the darkest areas are the areas where people are paying the most. Most people are paying over 50% of their salary, gross salary, for rent. So the darkest area, 32 to 55% of the population that's renting is paying over 50% of their gross salary for rent. And that's exceedingly high. I couldn't imagine, at any point in my life where I was paying that much, because it is a big burden. It doesn't leave much for your utilities, food. If you have children, it's a very difficult situation. Now the citywide, and because Huntington Beach is very expensive to live in, we all know, for all you residents, certainly somebody that's only been here 1 year, I'm not sure if it's sticker shock for you or anything like that. But basically, it's for citywide, it's 24%. So that's 24% of the population that rents is paying more than 50%, and that's pretty high. Granted, we do have there is a college located Golden West, so you get students that maybe live with other students, and therefore they're all paying high rent because they don't have a full-time job, so it kind of impacts it. But still, that's 24% is pretty high.
So you would expect the color shading to match the previous slide, right? If it didn't, you'd think.
Yeah, there should be some correlation. Yeah. And it really depends, because again, this is renters, so it doesn't say there's not an analysis for ownership saying if you pay 50%, which may be more normal, because you buy a house, you struggle till the payments come down and you're making more money, the old plan of owning a house. So again, more statistics and just information. We look at race and ethnicity. So we identify the highest concentrations. For instance, for Hispanics, the highest concentration is in the darkest areas. And here it's 45 to 73% of the population in the darkest areas is Hispanic. And then obviously the lightest of the light, up to only 15% is Hispanic population. So these are just information to kind of gauge if there's been changes in the community over the last 5 years. And as you may expect, since the population, unlike like the city of Irvine, which has grown from 200,000 to almost 300,000 in 5 years, you don't expect much change in the ethnicity and racial background of the city when the population's pretty much stagnant between 195 and 200,000.
And it's interesting to note the lack of correlation between this and the previous slide.
Yeah. Yes.
The Hispanic area, can you just tell me where that is? Yeah, where that is, where the boundaries live, or, because I can't see on that chart.
I couldn't hear.
Where's the Hispanic area? What is the name of the Hispanic?
There's no real, this area right here is pretty much was known as the Oakview neighborhood.
What are those streets?
They're Talbert, Beach Boulevard, Warner, and it looks like Golden West. So it's this square. That's the most predominant.
Around the cemeteries, like around the cemetery area.
Yeah.
Just north of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Strip. So, and here's a map for the Asian concentration of the areas. It's more towards the north, as you can see, which makes sense because that's closer to like Westminster and Garden Grove, which are more predominant Asian enclaves. And so the darkest area near the very top there is around 35 to 61% is of Asian population. So that's just kind of just some demographic background on the city. So the key for the 5-year plan is establishing priorities and goals so we know how and addressing the needs so we know how to use those CDBG and home funds. So we'll have housing goals, we'll have homeless goals, we'll have public service goals, public facility goals, infrastructure goals, and maybe economic development goals. But it's the goals, you have to have a goal or a priority in order to get funding. You just can't have something that's not tied to one of it's not tied to the goals. We can't fund it. It has to be tied to a goal. So that's how we develop it. So the current use of the CDBG funds, and this is for actually for 2023-24, we have a homeowner improvement grant and loan program. This helps rehab units that are maybe not up to code. They can take out they could take out either a grant or a loan. The loans are forgivable until you sell the property. So it's not like you get repairs and then you have to pay a monthly bill or whatever on those repairs. Everything's forgivable. The grants, we do a lot of emergency grants for low and moderate income families. And again, all these programs have to be tied to low and moderate income families. If you're above moderate income, then you're probably not going to be eligible for any of these funding sources. So the homeowner improvement grant and loan program, we usually do around 10, that's our goal a year, but sometimes we have extra funding, we could do 15 and maybe even 20. It's been really good. There's a lot of need out there for either mobile homes or single family housing that have issues, that have code and violations, that are health and safety issues. So it's great that we're able to provide this program to address those. We have 2 code enforcement officers that go into the low and moderate neighborhoods that were identified in the poverty, that are identified in the upcoming maps I'm going to show you. But we have 2 code enforcement officers that go into the neighborhoods to identify any code violations. The key is they don't cite them. They're more there to help. They're more to go in there and say, hey, this right here, this is a code violation. So, and they work with the owner of the place or the tenants that have the violation. They work with the people to make sure that there's no health and safety issues that could be problematic down the line. So essentially, it's good that they just want to work with the neighbors. So they're tied to a specific neighborhoods, and that's what I'm going to show you in a second. We also did improvements to this building. There was some ADA access issues, so we provided funding to the downstairs bathrooms to make them ADA compliant. And for those that don't know ADA, American Disabilities Act. And we also provided funding for ADA curb cuts. The city of Huntington Beach has 12 maintenance zones, and every year they do curb cut and ramps, so wheelchairs can go down the ramps and on streets and not have to go off a curb. And they'll provide the improvements to those streets. And last year I think we did maintenance zone number 2 or 1. I think this year we're doing number 2. It's either or, one of those, but it's been a good program. And so ADA improvements is big. I saw a couple, I'm sorry, shoots.
Just before you move on, is the CDBG funds, is that the same thing as the renewal for the $1.5 million grant?
Yeah, well, the CDBG is part of the federal $1.55 million grants, that and home. So CDBG and home combined equal 1.55. But again, we have to, every year in order to get that fund, we need to do all the documentation and provide all the reports. I'm sorry.
Question. So
Yes.
I formed this group, Huntington Beach Bike and Pedestrian Advocacy Group.
Uh-huh.
Years ago. We're now defunct, but I still meet with Vu and company. And it's interesting here on curb cuts, what it's worth. Sometimes people on bicycles don't see them
Oh, and they go down the,
because the angle on them.
uh-huh.
So we've been advocating for red paint or something.
Oh, something to identify it. I've seen the green strips or something.
Yeah, I know it because I've ridden for years, but other
Yeah.
people say, oh, it's a nice big entryway. That bikes are allowed on sidewalks.
Yeah, yeah.
So food for thought.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. As I mentioned before, there's only certain areas within the city that we can do like infrastructure improvements because they're predominantly low and moderate income. As I mentioned before, this information is based upon like poverty levels and income levels. So this is the 2020 census low and moderate income areas, and that's just kind of the pinkish, if you orangish, whatever color that is. But that identifies those areas that are at least 51% low and moderate income. And why it's important is because our code enforcement officers, our public works can only do infrastructure work in those neighborhoods. Everybody outside the pink, those two code enforcement officers that are being paid by CDBG can't like put a citation right here, but they work with people here, they work with people here, you know what I mean? And any curb improvements are typically done in these areas. So that's one of the things, because they've been proven based upon the 2020 census that they are at least 51% low and moderate income population. So just to give you a comparison, I'm not sure how much you'll be able to tell the difference. Here is the 2010 census. And this was used for the last 5-year cycle because obviously it was started in 2019 and the 2020 census wasn't available yet. So it's somewhat similar. I think if I recall correctly, right in here there's more of that pink, that are more areas that are identified as CDBG than what's shown on this map. Yes?
Yeah, I missed the understanding. Code enforcement can only go into certain areas?
Only these two, code enforcement officers can only go, the two that have been, that receive CDBG funding, that are paid from CDBG funding, can only go into certain areas that are CDBG designated areas. The areas in the pink, or in here, in this case, the blue. All the other code enforcement officers that are paid by general fund or whatever can go anywhere. Because that those two operate in the CDBG area. Okay? Sure. Okay, so also the other use of CDBG funds currently is that we have what's called a public services category. and a max of 15% of the funding that we receive, and again, we receive around $1 million of CDBG, which is around 168,000, can go to public service activities. And these are usually like nonprofit groups. For instance, we have a couple nonprofit groups like Robin's Nest, Hope Alliance, Stand Up for Kids, that apply for funds, and CPAB hears them out, reviews their applications, and determines if they do receive funding. So we typically have 4 or 5 nonprofit organizations that provide homeless services or senior services or even youth services, and that's typically where the public service money goes. So essentially, and then you have like 20% of the funds that go towards administration. Like I said, dealing with the federal government, it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of reporting, a lot of monitoring. And we also have every city that receives these sources of funding must have a fair housing service, a provider. And we have Fair Housing Foundation in Long Beach, and they've been with us, I think, for a while, at least 10 years. They're very good, and they deal with any tenant-landlord issues. So a lot of times we get a call from a tenant saying, my landlord's doing this or doing that, blah, 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 I think it's illegal. We refer them to our Fair Housing Service, which is Fair Housing Foundation. And so they help out the city in terms of dealing with any issues related to tenants and landlords, and includes like mediation, possibly. I haven't seen a mediation yet. Usually stuff is resolved or there's nothing of true evidence there to cause any like mediation or any other legal aspect. So some of that funding goes to Fair Housing Services, and then we have staff costs. So basically the CDBG pie is broken up 3 ways. 20% for admin, 15% for public services, and then the balance of 65% goes to the capital projects, which we already identified, like the curb cuts, code enforcement officers, any ADA improvements. Yes?
For certain housing, like
For-
Jamboree,
Yeah.
Jamboree over in Irvine has a building that it's like a transitional setup where people who are homeless come in and they have like a house mother or
Yeah.
somebody there who helps these people transition from being homeless to being housed.
Yeah.
And this person is a full-time person. How does that, does that come under a different funding umbrella than this Fair Housing
Yeah.
Service?
Yes. Those are usually operated, like Jamboree operates those, they oversee and they provide services to any of the supportive housing, permanent supportive housing. We're in the process of doing a transitional housing project on Beach. It used to be a hotel, and we're converting it to transitional housing. It's around 62 units and everything. If you drive by it on Beach, there's no facade per se, but it's under construction, and it's going to provide the 62 for transitional housing. We're hoping to connect the navigation center with this HB Oasis transitional housing, and then people to other permanent housing. But God, I can't remember what. It's north towards the 405. It's on the, if you're going north, it's on the left-hand side. I can't believe it's between near Warner. What is that?
North of Talbert on Beach.
Yeah, north of Talbert on Beach. Yeah.
So
Yes.
what money is being used for that that you just described?
Oh, the HBO ACES project, the money that's being used for that, it came from state funding, and then the city has what we call a housing fund. It's called the Low and Moderate Income Housing Fund, and it's all from the former redevelopment days. I'm not sure if any of you guys remember redevelopment days. We used to have a redevelopment agency here, and the agency used to loan money out to developers. Well, they're starting to repay those loans, and so we had, $3 million that we can contribute to this project and provide, along with other funding from the county and state, to provide the 62 units for transitional housing and everything, because that's something the city does not have much of, if any, is transitional housing. It's between a homeless shelter and permanent that we're kind of deficient on, and so this is one way of trying to address that, was building, or not building this project, but buying the hotel and then kind of reconstructing it to include like kitchenettes and everything, because obviously the hotel didn't have kitchenettes. So it's a massive project. If you drive by, just keep your eyes on the road, but quickly look over, I guess.
Is there anything, is there more of that kind of housing on the drawing boards, on the potential?
It's great question. Going forward, it's very possible, but it's not like my decision. I get developers will come to me and say, hey, I want to do a project, but can you give me $2 million and I'll do affordable housing? And then we have to get through the planning commission, city council. It's not the easiest thing, but we're trying to look at it, because there are mandates, as you may know, you've heard the housing element that require that we plan and maybe develop some affordable housing. We're on the hook for, I think it was like 13,000 units and everything. Are we going to build 13,000? Probably not. Not in my lifetime. But the thing is that there's always a possibility. It really depends upon the city council's desire to do affordable housing.
Well, like I said, when I first introduced myself, these people are living on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And we either have them on the street or we have them in shelter.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
This transition type of housing is what is needed to make it stick.
Yeah.
You can't just take them off the street and put them in something.
Absolutely.
And it
Yeah.
works. They need help learning how to live.
Yep, and that's what we're doing. We have a behavioral and a homeless and behavioral health division in the city that addresses people that are on the street and trying to help them get into and I'll get into in a second here, like into rental assistance programs where they're being monitored in terms of case management, and not just like put in an apartment and have fun and good luck and everything. No, this is case management. You're gonna get into it if you can demonstrate that you can live on your own, but with the security blanket around you of case management, then yeah, we're all for that. It's just, buying and finding these opportunities is difficult. So current use of the home funds. Remember, the home funds are $550,000, not a whole lot. Our main program is the tenant-based rental assistance program. We have two. One is for homeless and at risk of homelessness, and the other, and veterans and victims of domestic violence. And then the other program is the senior mobile homeowners. The TBRA program for the homeless and at risk of homelessness and veterans and domestic violence has been around since like 2016, I believe. The senior mobile home owners program has been around since just the last 2 years, and that was in response to rising space rents at mobile home parks, and seniors who are, most are living off Social Security could not keep up with that. So we provided a program that's based upon the tenant-based rental assistance program that HUD developed. And what it is basically is that if you earn $1,000 a month gross, then you're not paying more than 30% towards rent. So that's $300. So the difference, if the space rent or your rent is $1,000, then our program covers the other $700. So it really helps the homeless and at risk of homeless kind of get security. It's not forever. Usually these programs go for like 12 to 24 months tops, because it's just kind of a point to get them settled in, and as you said, get used to life skills and be able to budget and get a job, and then be able to move, maybe stay there where they are because it's a typical rental property, but they would be able to pay the full rent once they maybe get established. It's been pretty successful. It's not 100%, nothing is, but it's been very good in terms of us providing rental assistance to the senior mobile homeowners and to homeless and at risk of homelessness individuals and households. Yes?
The bottom one, affordable housing?
Yes.
What
So,
about that?
okay, that's the affordable housing project. Like I mentioned earlier, the one there next to the Denny's that we contributed $2.8 million in home funds. It's almost finished construction-wise. It'll be one more month. And currently, if you have anybody that's interested in moving in, there's a wait list that's being developed right now. There'll be a lottery because there'll be more than the units that we have there. We'll have more applicants. So unfortunately, there will be a lottery and to determine, but it's going to be a good project. And part of the senior housing project will have supportive services. So it's more permanent supportive housing than transitional housing, but it does serve a good purpose in that they have on-site services, because a lot of the individuals that are going to be moving in there will need those on-site services. That's it. Based on Greg, Kim, and everybody, we want to thank you for attending. Here's the survey QR. And so now I kind of want to move it on to just any other. You guys asked a lot of questions. Hopefully I was able to accommodate you on answering as much as I know, but I'm sure you have more comments and more opinions that you want to talk about, and we're willing to listen to any other suggestions or comments that you have. So if anybody,
Please raise your hand, I'll make sure we get your question.
yeah.
So I understand that with transitional housing, and if you're trying to, objective of taking homeless people off the street, that they can't be using substance abuse to attend, to be in that housing, because I know I talked to a guy on
Yeah.
the street and he was saying, oh, I didn't qualify to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same with the shelter, the navigation center there on Beach. It's illegal substances, they go through searches. I don't know the full protocol on how you get into the facility, but I know they're everybody tries to sneak stuff in and everything, and that's the same with the HB Oasis that's going to be opened up. If you recall, just to give you a little history on the HB Oasis, they moved everybody in, but then we were expecting it to go to permanent. It was just going to be transitional, in, out, temporary. But now it's going to be permanent kind of housing, transitional. So we had to move everybody to hotels for the past 6 months so we could construct and reconstruct, add kitchenettes, add ADA improvements, add a additional building on the back just for social services and everything. So but that facility is going to be the same way. If you're caught with any type of illegal substances or whatever, it could be very detrimental to you living there.
Well, are you allowed to have alcohol?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I think so. I'm not sure. I don't know the exact rules. Not at the navigation center, but.
Isn't marijuana supposed to be legal for recreation?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I don't know if that's because it's private property. It's not owned by us. It's owned by a different developer, but we just help build it or can reconstruct it. So I don't know what the exact house rules are, but it could be. I don't know. I don't know what's legal and what isn't legal anymore. So you're asking the wrong person.
I don't know either, 'cause I don't smoke or drink or any of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But I'm thinking to myself, if you can have an alcoholic beverage and marijuana is
Yeah.
supposed to be recreationally legal, I mean, who is it making the rules?
I don't know. Well, the people that own the facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe the smell and the damage it could cause to the interior. I don't
Yeah,
know.
your neighbors
Yeah.
get drunk on it.
Yeah, yeah. So, but they have house rules, and I'm sure they're implementing them. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate everybody attending and taking the time and being here. So, all right. Thank you. Take care. Thank you.